Hi, and welcome to the Splitting Atoms podcast, Chapter 2. I'm Kaylin Stone, your host, and I'm joined today by Mike Rencheck, President and CEO of Bruce Power. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Caitlin. Great to be here. Glad to see you again.
I know you're a very busy man, so thank you for taking the time. And we're here today to have a general discussion on Bruce Power, your capabilities, and how you are rising to meet the demand for the electrification that we're needing in our province and across the country. Before we dive in, you joined Bruce Power 2016.
Yes.
If I'm okay, so I'm off to a good start. We've got that right.
Great start, yes.
And you have had a fantastic career in the energy sector. You've worked for some major companies. You've led thousands of people throughout. You've also been recognized by the National Safety Council for your commitment to worker safety and the U.S. Department of Energy as a STEM ambassador. You've sat on numerous boards, committees, served as an advisor. But with all of that, I would bet that the work you are most proud of is the work you've done as a husband, father, and now as a grandfather. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought I might be right there. I would bet my bottom dollar. And so, question for you: how old is your oldest grandchild now?
He'll be 2 next month.
2 next month. So,
our only grandchild.
Is it a one? Okay,
yeah,
so it's. I've already given you a second grandchild here.
Ready to go.
No pressure to anyone watching. But so since becoming a grandfather 2 years ago, has that changed your outlook as you show up to work every day about the legacy you and your team here and the people at Bruce Power are building and leaving to those generations coming up?
Yeah, Bruce Power, we talk about wanting to power the future. Our mission statement is to safely produce clean, reliable, affordable electricity, life-saving medical isotopes to strengthen communities, protect the environment, and secure tomorrow. And it's that last piece, right? Strengthen communities, protect the environment, secure tomorrow. Well, the grandson represents tomorrow, right? That's the future. That's future generations that are coming after us. And we want to leave the world in a better place. We want clean energy for people. We want life-saving medical isotopes. We want to make sure that the things we're doing today make a difference, not only for today, but for the future. So yeah, it puts things in perspective and really reminds you why we're all here and what we're doing in the nuclear industry.
That's right. I don't have grandchildren. I don't have children, but I think that would probably be the most poignant reminder there is of having it right at your fingertips and in your arms. When you go home or you travel to see your family, it's right there as a reminder. Let's talk about the numbers here at Bruce Power a little bit, because they're fairly impressive. So we are here at Bruce Power today on site. Thank you for welcoming us in. We have 2 stations, Bruce A and Bruce B, 8 reactors, 4 at each station. They are providing 6550 megawatts to the grid at all times, consistent power. We have a life expectancy to 2064. You employ over 4,200 people on site,
yes,
plus contractors, which I know it can fluctuate, but that has to have.
We have 10 to 12,000 unique people that come to work here each week.
Wow.
So that's between Bruce Power people and contractors.
Yeah.
So it is a major employer in the area and throughout the province. Our life extension program, we think, is good for 22,000 direct and indirect jobs, roughly 3 to 4 billion in GDP for Ontario, and about 8 to 11 billion in GDP for all of Canada. So we are an economic development powerhouse as well as making electricity and medical isotopes for the world, right? So really that aspect doesn't, it resonates and it sits home with us, our responsibility we have in the province.
It's funny, your economic impact, that puts you up there with what you do for the Canadian economy is like what Taylor's doing, Taylor Swift, for the U.S. economy with her.
Oh, compared to Taylor Swift, I doubt that we are that. Yeah.
You're in the ballpark of what she's doing. I think that's a good day at work. And so even, I forgot to mention, with over 6,500 kilowatts hitting the grid, that makes megawatts. Sorry. Oh, yeah. That's why you're the technical side of it. So with that kind of delivery, it makes you the largest in North America. We're sitting on the largest nuclear site in the world in terms of footprint, and 90% of your supply chain is right here, homegrown in Ontario, correct?
So let's talk about that. So Bruce Power supplies 30% of Ontario's electricity at 30% less than the average residential cost. So we're a low-cost producer here in the province. And when you look at our technology, it's a Canadian-made technology. About 90% of all the money we spend in our investments here at Bruce Power stays in Ontario with Ontario businesses. About 95 to 98% stays in Canada. So we deal directly with roughly 480 primary companies here in Ontario, and they're dealing with probably anywhere from 10 to 100 different companies themselves. So when you look at that economic footprint, that's how we get to 22,000 direct and indirect jobs, roughly 3 to 4 billion in GDP here in Ontario, and again, 8 to 11 billion in GDP throughout Canada. So the economic outreach and economic input here in Ontario and in Canada is massive from nuclear energy because we're a homegrown technology, we're a made in Canada technology.
It's impressive. Those are such big numbers. And when we look at those big numbers, what does that mean for Ontarians in terms of their lifestyle, in terms of their pocketbooks, which you've already alluded to a little bit, and in terms of future career paths that they could take?
Oh, sure. I think in total, the nuclear industry employs something like 76,000 people here in Canada. But more importantly, it employs people from all walks of life, and if not directly, then indirectly. Particularly with the life extension program we have going on right now, we have roughly 3,000 to 4,000 building trades coming in and out of our facility. We have people working in factories like the United Steelworkers. Here at site, we have the Power Workers Union and the Society of United Professionals here. It's a massive employer, and these are great jobs. These are well-paying jobs. When you look at the building trades, it's actually a place where you can earn a six-figure salary, you have benefits and a retirement program. You can sustain a family on that, have a career, and really look for the long term with these types of positions. So as you're going to school, whether you're going off to university or you're going into the trades, we have the ability to offer a great career and a great job for the long term. Like we were talking about earlier, our perspective is with our life extension program to go all the way to 2064. And as we look towards the future in terms of potentially building new reactors, we're talking 2100, right? So you can see not only your career here, but potentially your children's career and their career going forward, right? So it really is quite a promise we have here in a clean energy transition with nuclear energy.
I think a lot of people don't realize the impact that nuclear has on their life, whether they know it or not, right? Whether they understand or have that awareness. Nuclear is in their lives every day. And you talk about a career potential that has the impact that this industry does, whether it's chasing net zero goals, the medical isotopes that we spoke about. There's something here right in the backyard of Ontarians, this little gem, this jewel that we have, that most people live blissfully unaware of maybe. They don't even realize that every day we're here for you, right? Our industry, Bruce Power, the people that are contributing. So it's an interesting topic. I think people should maybe peel back the onion a little bit more, the layers.
Yeah, let's talk about that in terms of peeling back those layers. Years ago, Ontario phased out coal. Now, how were they able to do that? It was really by restarting the Bruce A units. We were able to supply upwards of 90% of the energy needed to phase out coal. Now, what did that mean? That meant a lifestyle change for people that lived in the city because you didn't have smog days anymore now. In the early 2000s, we got up to a peak of like 53 smog days a year. Since the Bruce A units were restarted, we have 0 smog days in Toronto now. So people can breathe freely without, if you have asthma, you don't have to worry about going outside in the summer anymore. Like we've done work with the asthma society, and they'll tell you stories where kids would go out in the summertime and end up in the emergency room at the end of the day because they couldn't breathe. Also, from an aspect here in nuclear energy, we make medical isotopes. We make isotopes that sterilize about 40% of the once-used medical devices around the world. So when you think about that, you can go to the doctor's or dentist's office anywhere in the world, and chances are 40% chance that it was sterilized by an isotope we make here right here at Bruce Power. And we've advanced into cancer treatments now. So we have brain tumor treatments, and we're moving into lutetium-177, which quite frankly is being used for prostate cancer treatment, but in an emerging area called theranostics, where the cancer is diagnosed and treated at the same time. And it's great work being done by Dr. Rebecca Wong at Prince Margaret Hospital to really advance this. And she'll show pictures of a torso of an individual that failed chemotherapy twice, full of cancerous cells, and after her treatment with lutetium, it's effectively gone. So, quite exciting time in the nuclear energy industry for clean energy, as well as medical treatments now, cancer treatments.
It's incredible. As someone who has a cat with asthma and a sister who battled and beat cancer, I don't forget that when I show up to work for this industry. So it's a very good reminder, or maybe a lesson for a lot of people who don't realize we do some of those secondary things, wonderful byproducts.
Yes, secondary. You may not realize this, but Canada is a superpower in medical isotope production. Our partner called Nordion, they're based in Ottawa, they own 80% of the market for cobalt-60 that's used for sterilization and brain tumor treatments. What other industry can make that claim from Canada? Like, we are a superpower in medical isotope production here at Bruce Power, or our partners at OPG, and some of the other partners in the Canadian Isotope Council that gathered together. So this is something that as Canadians we should be very proud of, and nuclear energy is proud to be part of that.
Yes, I would agree with that statement wholeheartedly. And one thing we haven't really touched upon, but I think is really important for people to understand, base load power. What is that, and why should Canadians and Ontarians be aware of it?
Yeah, a simple explanation means it's always on. It's there when you need it. Right? Intermittent resources like solar and wind, well, if the wind's not blowing, you don't have power. If the sun's not shining, you don't have power. And you hear stories about, well, we can back it up with batteries. That lasts about 4 hours, right? So really, when you think about baseload power, you think of being able to go to the wall, flick the switch, and the lights come on, and your heat is on, right? So very reliable, very dependable, a very secure source of energy that can help us be energy independent here in this volatile world that we face these days. And in fact, you may not know that Canada is one of the largest uranium miners in the world. Cameco Corporation, headquartered in Saskatoon, is one of the largest in the world. They not only supply our uranium for our fuel, but they also make it right here in Canada. So it's a full supply chain here in Canada. We don't have to look elsewhere around the world for energy. We have it all right here, and it's a great Canadian product and a great Canadian source of energy for the future, clean energy source for the future.
And that's when we talk about energy security. That's what we're talking about, is being able to secure our own energy and not being dependent on others, because we see the problems with that have arisen historically, with needing to look outside of your own for power and resources. So that's an amazing thing that our supply network is right here.
Yeah, sure. Like solar panels, most solar panels are made in China. I think it's something like 8 out of every 10. Wind turbines, about 7 of every 10 are made in China. So these sources of energy are coming from somewhere else. Yes, we need clean energy sources like that, but can we really rely on them for the long term? Here in Canada, we make nuclear energy. We have it as a product. We mine uranium here. We make the fuel here. It is something that is indigenous to our country and our capabilities. We are also a nuclear powerhouse in the world. We're respected around the world for our nuclear energy operations and our technical abilities.
I was joking on my last chapter with John Gorman. We had talked about that we're a superpower, and as a small population, a small nation, there's few things that we can really claim as ours. So we joked, of course, hockey and nuclear, and what a combination that is. So amazing. So we've covered a lot. Why don't we take a little bit of a break? We're going to go to one of our supporters of the episode, Tetr, and when we come back, we will talk about some of the programs happening right here at Bruce Power that are going to meet the demands of tomorrow. With their partners, Tetr is not only advancing technology-driven engineering projects, they're setting a new standard for what can be accomplished when people and organizations work towards a unified goal. Collaboration for Tetr goes beyond innovation and project success. It's also about inclusion. Through their partnership with Beaverstone Consulting, Tetr is bridging the gap between cutting-edge technology and Indigenous traditions based on wisdom that has been passed down through generations.
Tetra Tech believes that inclusion doesn't end with strategic business partnerships. That's why they've recently delivered free project management and project controls training courses to community members of Saugeen First Nation and Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation communities. These courses aren't just about skills, they're about empowerment, equipping Indigenous community members with the tools they need to lead projects from start to finish. If you'd like to learn more on how Tetra Tech is changing the future of the nuclear industry, head to www.tetratech.com.
So welcome back. I want to talk about some of the projects, although I say some because there's so many that you are working towards right now that we would run out of time. We would take up too much of your time. But there are a few that I want to touch point on because I was going to ask you the question, is demand going up for electricity? But I think everyone knows that it is. I think the appropriate question would be, is it going up or is it going up exponentially faster than we have ever seen before? Because I think it's the latter.
Well, the ISO, the Independent Electric System Operator, or ISO, just published a report today saying it's going up about 2% per year right now.
Which is historically remarkable compared to past.
It's either been stable or declining in past years, so we're at a point now where we're looking forward to the future. You see many things electrifying with electric vehicles, large server farms, steel is electrifying. So you see all this industrial demand showing up with society now looking more towards electricity to be able to clean up our energy system.
And I mean, I can't think of a time really when everything you do now is either on your phone or you're plugging your car in or your bike or your scooter, like everything is electrified, even just in a lifestyle choice. So some of the projects, and again, we can't touch on them all, but the life extension, you had mentioned that earlier. What is that, and what are some of the steps being taken? What does that entail, I suppose?
Yeah, so we are renewing 6 of our units, units 3 through 8. Units 1 and 2 were already renewed. And what does it mean? That means we're replacing all the parts in it and building it new so that it can run all the way out to 2064. One way to think of it is we're replacing all the things that go into making electricity with brand new parts, brand new equipment.
It's a refresh, if you will, and an update, a refurbishment.
Yeah, sure, and we're able to put new technologies in, so not only is it making it new, so that it lasts all the way out to 2064 and beyond, but we're also able to make more power now. When we, as you said earlier, when we started our refurbishment program, we were a 6,300 megawatt site. Today we're 6,550 megawatts. We have a project we call Project 2030, where we'll be advancing to 7,000 plus megawatts per site. Now, what does that mean? For every 250 megawatts, we can supply 250,000 homes with electricity. So roughly 1,000 megawatts would be almost 1 million homes more of electricity being supplied from the very same assets that we built 40-some years ago.
Which is incredible, because how many, in today's world, when technology is replaceable, how quickly are you getting a new phone, a new computer? It's outdated so quickly. To think we are using the resources already here and investing in them so that they live on, they live, into the future generations and leave that legacy. It's a pretty cool concept.
Oh, it is, and the asset lasts 35 or so years. And you think about it's a long-lived asset. We're able to renew it, so we're able to reuse the buildings and a lot of the systems. It's not a throwaway, right? It's not part of a throwaway society. Yeah, we have to take some things out and put some new things in, but here we are, we're going to get another 40 years out of the same footprint. When you look at other technologies like solar panels, they'll last 20, 25 years and you throw them away. So where are these millions and millions of solar panels going to end up, right? So we've got to get on to recycling of solar panels. That needs to be part of what we're doing so we don't end up with a situation that looks like plastics where it's everywhere or in landfills. So I think in the long term, when we look at clean energy, it's factoring these things in and figuring out how to reuse these existing sites and be able to do more and better things with them.
And so the MCR, the major component replacement, that is part of that life extension program. That is where we are replacing the components that make up the reactors and the plant and the support system.
Yeah, it's basically the major component replacement replaces the reactor internals, some of the feeder tubes and the steam generators. What's that mean? We're replacing all the parts that make the heat that turn the water into steam to turn the turbine that actually makes the electricity. So it's basically, think of it as the primary parts of the teapot that boils the water and makes steam.
Okay. So now there is an exciting project that is in the exploratory stage. That is Bruce C, which you can dispel this rumor here and now, but I heard through the grapevine that Bruce C is actually named after Caitlin, after me. You can either burst my bubble or no.
You can think that way as long as you want. If it makes you feel good, we're all for that.
So it's confirmed. No, I'm of course joking. We have Bruce A, Bruce B. The next step would be C. I also know your wife's first initial of her name, so I feel like if it was named after someone, my Caitlin would not be the C. You might be in some trouble then. So let's talk about that. It's in the exploratory stage. What does that mean, and what are our hopes for the next steps?
Yeah, so first of all, we're exploring Bruce C. The first thing we have to do is an impact assessment, and that's what we've agreed to do with the province. The province did a study last year, and when it looked at what it needed to do to decarbonize society by 2050, they saw that they need to double the capacity of the electric system, which meant, amongst other technologies, they would need another 18,000 megawatts of new nuclear energy. So as part of that, you can't do anything unless you have a plan, and part of a plan is being able to get a permit and a site. So this gets back to what we were talking about, reusing those existing sites as very low cost, no regrets type actions to be able to take things into the future. So we agreed to work with the province on getting and doing the impact assessment and getting a permit to add up to another 4,800 megawatts for the site. And we're working hand in hand now with the federal government, both the Impact Assessment Organization, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. And in doing that, we'll go through that process and look at how we can get a permit here for the site.
Very good. So very exciting.
Very exciting times for sure. And why is it so exciting? That means there's a long-term potential here for employment, for great jobs in Ontario. There's a long-term potential here for clean energy. You know, we talked about our existing sites running out to 2064 and beyond. If we would build new plants here at this site, you're now talking 2100. You're into the next century. That truly means that you can have a career here. The families in the area will have security. It'll be economic prosperity made here in Canada for the long term.
Yeah, and so if it moves forward, because we're not quite there yet to know if it will, I can't wait for the groundbreaking and my Caitlin plaque, and I'll provide it, stick it on. You'll find it one day, you won't know, and there it will be. But that I think it's such an interesting time because people don't really realize we've been here. We have already put these plans in process, and work is already being done, and exploration is already being taken to ensure we continue to show up for Canadians and Ontarians and providing that energy that they need. But they don't really know what's happening over here and all of the work going in and all of the efforts by so many people. So very good. Now let's look bigger picture at the industry and the supply chain, because of course when we need more output, that puts strain on the supply chain and challenges. How is our supply chain starting to really work to also meet that demand and ensure that they're showing up?
Yeah, so years ago in 2016, Ontario Power Generation started the refurbishment of their Darlington units. At the same time, Bruce Power was starting the refurbishment of its units 3 through 8. At the time, their OPG CEO, Jeff Lyash, and I got together, and we decided to work with the supply chain base here in Ontario. So between the two organizations, we've issued long-term contracts, some as long as 10 years, to different companies here throughout Ontario. Those companies have been able now to invest in their facilities, to renew their manufacturing, and more importantly, able to hire young people into the organization to make them more sustainable for the long term. So as we've gone through our refurbishment program, it really puts us in a prime spot to build new facilities because we have a young workforce, a new workforce now that's trained, new facilities, and we're able to make these pieces and parts right here in Canada. Yeah. It's a success story any way you look, and with the building trades now adding more and more people into into their organizations, it's really setting us up for the future.
And you have a word that you use to describe competitors who can also collaborate. I cannot say that word. It's one of those ones so you say it for me.
Yeah, we call them competimates.
So I call it collaboration. I cannot say isn't that funny? We were joking earlier about things drawing a blank. I don't even try, I just can't. It's not a word I can capture. So that's incredible that this whole body of people is moving towards this streamlined goal. So if we look to the future, what does nuclear mean for our net zero goals as a country?
Oh, we will not get to net zero without nuclear energy. It has to be part of the solution. It is not the only part of the solution. We'll need intermittent resources, other forms of clean energy. But nuclear is going to provide that base load energy that's always there, that you can count on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I'll give you an example, like our Unit 7 reactor, it's operated almost 1,000 continuous days right now. The generation portion online for over 600 days continuously with nonstop. That's the element that nuclear energy brings into society. It's going to be that energy security, that dependable, reliable feature that you can always count on, that it'll be there when you need it.
And what it means for our pocketbooks, because what would the price point difference be, roughly? Not to put you on the spot with pulling numbers right away, but the cost for nuclear, for people paying their energy bills, how would that compare to other solutions?
That's a great question for your audience. Let's look to the Ontario Energy Board for that answer. And if you look at it today, you'll see solar energy is costing 50 cents per kilowatt hour. You'll see biomass energy is about 25 cents per kilowatt hour. You'll see wind energy right around 15 cents, 14 cents per kilowatt hour. Natural gas is about 12 cents. You'll see Bruce Power nuclear a little over 9 cents, and hydropower right around 6.5 cents, maybe a little more, a little less, depending on how much it rains outside. So nuclear energy really is the low-cost source of energy with hydro. And it just so happens we're fortunate here in Ontario that nuclear is 60% of the energy being provided, and hydro is 25%. So you have these two low-cost sources of baseload energy supplying our grid. Well, you have the higher cost solar energy and wind energy that is working to fulfill the gaps.
So at a time when it seems like life is getting more and more expensive, nuclear and hydro are coming to our rescue a little bit as we pay the bills every month.
Yeah, I think when you look at the sustainability for the long term, it's these big sources, these continuous sources that are going to anchor the pricing for 30, 40, 50 years. When you look at hydro plants, they were built some almost 100 years ago. When you look at our plants here that we're refurbishing, they were built 40 years ago. As a part of our refurbishment, they'll go another 40 years into the future. So once they're paid for, they go for the long term, they end up stabilizing electric rates over time. Other technology sources, you need to change them out every 20, 25 years. So it's going to be constantly flow of cash to keep them going, to keep them renewed.
So if I'm understanding you, just as we kind of wrap up our discussion today, if tomorrow nuclear was off the table, right? Someone comes over, takes power, and nuclear is gone. If I'm absorbing everything we've talked about, we have a very low chance of hitting our net zero goals. We have inconsistent energy or a reliance on others to provide that energy security for us. Our pocketbooks are going to take a hit. And we're not contributing to the world in the same way as we are on some of the other things, like our health and wellness, the cancer fighting. That's all gone. That's eliminated. And our challenges become much more severe as we find a solution that could compare.
Yeah, so if you think about it this way, Ontario already has a deeply decarbonized electric grid. Deep decarbonization is believed to be below 50 grams equivalent of CO2 per kilowatt hour. Now, what's that mean? That means Ontario's grid is roughly 35 grams equivalent of CO2 per kilowatt hour. We've done that predominantly with nuclear at 60%, hydro 25%, intermittent resources like solar and wind at about 8%. So we've been able to achieve that roughly at a price point of about 13 cents on average per kilowatt hour. Now, that's a clean energy grid. When you look at others who are trying to clean their grids up that have gone in a different direction, predominantly using intermittent resources, let's take a look at Germany as an example. Presently, their emissions are at about 300 to 400 grams equivalent of CO2. Their cost is roughly 30 cents per kilowatt hour, and they still have a long ways to go and much more investment to go to get to the point where Ontario is. Similarly, you can look at California. They're roughly 150 grams equivalent of CO2. They've had a massive push into solar and wind. Their prices are 30 cents on a good day, right? So quite expensive power in both those jurisdictions, and that's not something we have here in Ontario. And you can look around the world to Sweden, to the Nordic countries, to France, who use a mix of baseload nuclear, baseload hydro, combined with solar and wind to be able to power an economy. You'll see their prices in the same range as Ontario, and grids largely decarbonized. So it is a great solution. It works around the world, and it helps hold the prices in a space when we go through this clean energy transition where we're not looking for higher and higher costs for people.
And the last time I checked, you can't harvest isotopes from a turbine or a solar panel.
No, and it's one of the advantages we have in the nuclear industry here. Like, we can make massive scale of isotopes and continue the tradition that Canada has had for a long time of being medical isotope superpower. And it's a space that we dominate, and we can continue dominating that for decades to come.
Well, I'd like to end on a story, if you'd allow. It's a short story, I promise. So last summer, my family and I, we went to the Toronto Zoo. We're big zoo fans. And my sister and I got frozen rosés, some frosés. And in my full-time job, I'm in branding and marketing, as you know. And part of that entails me coordinating branded merchandise for my clients. And the cups that we got our frosé in, I had actually done. I had coordinated on behalf of one of my winery clients at the time. And anytime that happens for me, it's just a cool moment, right? You see something out living in the wild as it was intended to, and it makes you feel good. That's, hey, I did that, I contributed. So I tell you this story because I really have a curiosity for you, a question for you. 30% of Ontario's power comes from right here. Mm-hmm. Does it ever hit you, or do you ever come to some sort of awareness as you're driving around, and I know you traveled the province a lot, as you drive through a neighborhood, every third house, if they're having family movie night, you and your team here, you are the reason they're having family night. Every third arena, hockey arena that you travel past, you are the reason that the lights are on and the Timbits can take to the ice. Every third hospital that you pass by, you, your team here at Bruce Power, and the people that make it what it is are the reason life-saving activities are taking place in that establishment. Does that ever just hit you as you're out in the wild?
You know, I think our people at Bruce Power take great pride in knowing that we help keep society functioning here in Ontario. We keep the lights on. But also, we're making medical isotopes that are saving people's lives around the world, people that we've never met and we don't know. And I think our folks feel really good about this each and every day. It's really a purpose that we have when we come to work. So yeah, it does dawn on us, but it's also a responsibility that we have, and we take it very seriously because we know what happens when the power goes out and how lonely and cold it can get in Canada in the winter, right, if you don't have electricity. So it's something that we focus on as a team, and we take great pride in supplying for the citizens of Ontario.
That makes me happy. That is my hope for our industry, is that we realize we are contributing to whatever our role, however long we've been in it. We come to work and we do our daily tasks, and what we're really doing is contributing to that, to that bigger picture. So that's my hope, is that we all realize that and take time to recognize.
Yeah, we like to say we're strengthening communities, protecting the environment, and securing tomorrow, so we all have a brighter future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It has not only been an insightful and I think very informative conversation, but it's been delightful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Caitlin, for having us here at Bruce Power, and thank you for coming to Bruce Power.
The weather couldn't hold us back today. It was the roads are a little blustery, but it was a wonderful drive to get here and have this conversation.
Yeah, it sounds good.
And that is it for Chapter 2 of the Splitting Atoms podcast. Thank you to Bruce Power, Mike Rencheck, and the entire team that made this possible. I also want to thank Chelsea, my videographer, who is learning more about nuclear than I think she ever thought she would. A big thank you to Tetr again for supporting this episode. Be sure to follow the Splitting Atoms podcast on all social media channels as well as LinkedIn. We have some exciting news coming up, including who is going to be on the episode next and a new series that is going to drop in the near future, a special segment series. Last but not least, I want to thank you, the audience, for spending time with us and for splitting atoms with me. Until next time, I'm Kaylin Stone, your host of the Splitting Atoms podcast.